Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
From San Diego City Hall to the South Bay, money is tight for public services. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Carroll in for Maya Trabulsi. We start in San Diego, where the city is taking a rare step just to pay its bills. That's because the budget picture is worse than anticipated. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says the city is having to dip into its reserves to cover expenses in the current fiscal year.
Over the past 6 months, San Diego has seen a drop in sales tax revenue and fees paid by utility companies. The police and fire departments have also overspent on overtime, leaving the city's general fund roughly $10 million in the red. At a city council meeting last week, Councilmember Sean Elo Rivera expressed frustration, saying the mayor has dragged his feet on creating new revenue, such as charging visitors for parking in Mission Bay Park.
I have a really hard time hearing things like we've done all we can because we didn't even get the car started to get to where we need to go to generate the revenue that we want to run this city in the way that we want to run it, the way our residents want to run it.
The city has about $207 million in its general fund reserve. That's more than 2.5 times what the city had in its reserves 15 years ago. And not since the Great Recession has the city actually dipped into those funds.
I very much hesitate to utilize the reserves. We didn't even do this during the pandemic, which was a sudden and unpredicted event, and that was before the CARES Act funding was available. So I really want to avoid doing that if possible.
The council is expected to vote June 10th on whether to use its reserves to balance the current fiscal year's budget. On the same day, they'll be voting on a budget for the next fiscal year. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
The South Bay Union School District plans to close at least one elementary school amid declining enrollment. State funding for schools is tied to attendance. The district's enrollment has dropped by 40% since 2011. The school board voted unanimously last night to close Central Elementary School after the next school year. District administrators suggested planning for 2 other school closures by 2031, Sunny Slope Elementary and Berry Elementary. Ana Barnes has a son at Sunny Slope. She and community members spoke against those closures.
It may not affect him directly, but there's other communities, and we're speaking on behalf of not just ours. I don't think closing schools is something that we want to do.
The board voted to close Central Elementary first. The board will decide later whether to close additional schools, and if so, which ones. District leaders say they'll spend the next year planning student transportation, staffing, and school attendance boundaries. We're living in a time of cutbacks from local school districts to the federal government, or from the federal government. Programs that feed people, help them stay healthy, find jobs, and enrich them are on the chopping block. The public is taking an unprecedented hit. Noah Yee Yick of the Center on Policy Initiatives spoke to KPBS's Amitha Sharman on where we might be headed.
Noah, the House just passed legislation that includes $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid and SNAP. 14 million people could lose health coverage, 3 million food stamps. At the same time, the plan, headed to the Senate, would make permanent trillions of dollars in tax cuts for the wealthy. It's called the largest wealth transfer from the poor to the rich in this country's history. How damaging is this level of inequality?
So what's really important to remember is that budgets are moral documents. They are a statement of our values. With these kinds of budgets, our nation is making it clear, the federal administration is making it clear what they value, who they value, what their priorities are, and who they're willing to leave behind. The largest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich is exactly a reflection of this administration's priorities and where this nation is headed. It is cutting away from programs and services like food assistance, SNAP, health insurance, education, right? That are the foundation of a healthy, thriving nation, a healthy, thriving city. And instead, putting the priority on profits, on the wealthy and well-connected over working class communities, over low-income communities and communities of color.
Meanwhile, California is grappling with a multi-billion-dollar deficit and may cut long-term care for the poor and elderly, freeze state worker salaries. The city of San Diego is planning to cut library hours, park hours, and public bathrooms. Lake Murray might only be open on the weekends. Talk to me about what these cuts, federal, state, local, all at the same time, do to a society's psyche.
I mean, so these budgets of austerity, of chronic disinvestment in people, right, in these public infrastructure that people rely on to not just thrive, to merely survive, are going to hollow out our city, our state, our nation's ability to properly respond to crises, and is going to leave people further behind. When we're cutting those things, we're not just cutting hours and closing restrooms and reducing programming, we're losing trust. We are losing community, we're losing care, we're losing belonging, and the sense that what we're building truly belongs to all of us.
I want to probe that a little bit deeper. Libraries, parks, Lake Murray, with its natural glory, what role do these places play in binding communities? And when you reduce access, how do residents maintain their sense of community?
It can be really difficult, and that's the one thing we've been pushing the most on, is that these cuts, especially in the city's budget, for example, if we're getting hyper-local, these cuts will disproportionately impact youth, our seniors, working class communities, low-income communities, communities of color, who have fewer alternatives to these spaces, these options that bring people together. Libraries, parks and rec, places like Lake Murray are some of the very few accessible public spaces that bring people that sense of belonging, that bring people joy, that bring people together and really make it feel like this city is a place that everyone can truly call home. So when we cut away from that, we're also telling these communities, hey, you don't matter as much.
So what options do they have to still meet someplace and maintain those community ties?
It's not about what ends up happening when those spaces are cut. It's, no, let's look at that joy is going to be disappearing. It's going to be harder to access that. And that's going to have a tremendous impact, not just now, but in future generations to come. It'll have a ripple effect on communities for the future as well.
Let's probe that point a little bit deeper. You're a policy advocate committed to what you describe as creating a world where joy is accessible to all. How do you accomplish that in a time of unparalleled cuts?
We need to put pressure on our leaders to put people first, right? When I think of what it means to live with joy, folks are housed, right? People have, I see kids running around playing, enjoying the diversity of San Diego. People have the ability to swim in a clean ocean, to drink a clean glass of water. They have enough food on the table. They can breathe clean air. They have health care and education. People have good jobs that pay them well and treat them with dignity. Those are the foundations that where joy can be found, but also that facilitate that.
Public Matters is a partnership between KPBS, iNews Source, and Voice of San Diego. You can see more of our stories at kpbs.org/publicmatters. It's been a week since a private jet crashed into a Tierra Santa neighborhood. 6 people died and 8 people on the ground were hurt. There's also a lot of property damage that will take time to deal with. KPBS is checking in with those who are navigating car insurance claims. Rory Pendergast is a personal injury attorney at Rory Law in San Diego. He says not all insurance policies are adequate for a situation like this.
Unfortunately, if you don't have comprehensive, then the auto policy isn't going to pay you immediately. So then your only sort of recourse is going to be going after the responsible parties.
The California Department of Insurance says they're available to assist anyone who suffered damage to their vehicle as a result of this terrible accident. We continue to follow the latest developments on last week's plane crash. That includes Scott Rod's investigative work on the weather monitoring issues at Montgomery Field the morning of the crash. Go to kpbs.org to get that story and more.
Well, we're dealing with a warm pattern here, at least during the day. At night, we get some pretty good relief, and there will be some clouds that lurk near the coastline here, that marine layer. But we're tracking Tropical Storm Alvin. And you can see over the next few days, we expect this to maintain intensity as a tropical storm, at least through much of Friday. And then with the colder water, we'll see some gradual loss of wind energy, tropical depression. We'll talk about how this will influence the southwest forecast in just a bit.
There will soon be another place for San Diegans without permanent housing to stay overnight in their vehicles. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer has an update on the H Barracks site in Point Loma.
Nearby the San Diego airport, the city of San Diego is getting ready to open its 5th safe parking lot site to help homeless San Diegans find a safe place to sleep overnight in their vehicles. And this one is the biggest one yet. The 190-space lot has areas reserved for RVs and oversized vehicles. Participants will receive help with housing, medical issues, and signing up for government assistance programs. Jewish Family Service will operate this site in addition to 4 others across the city.
Safe parking is one of our most successful interventions. Typically, these are first-time homeless, and it's a program for individuals living out of their vehicles. So we see a lot of seniors, a lot of families, young professionals.
Kota Sizer leads the city's community engagement effort for the soon-to-open H Barracks safe parking site.
We'll nearly double our entire system's capacity. We're repurposing city-owned land that was formerly part of NTC Naval Base, was used by SDPD and SD Fire for several years, but then has sat pretty much abandoned and unused for several years.
The city expects the site to open by the end of this month. It also has an end date.
It is slated for the Pure Water project in 2029. However, we didn't really have an interim use in the meantime, and so we took advantage of city-owned land.
Some neighbors have raised health and safety concerns about the safe parking lot. Real estate developer McMillan NTC sued the California Coastal Commission, who approved the city's permit application, to stop the project. They argue that homeless parking, sheltering, and services are not legally permissible on the site, and that the city lacks a conditional use permit for the project. That case goes to trial in February. In the meantime, when it opens,
H Barracks will be an overnight-only lot. It'll be operating from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. And during those overnight hours, you have on-site security, on-site JFS staff.
Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
San Diego now has a new state-of-the-art public health lab ready to detect and respond to the next epidemic outbreak. KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen takes us for a look inside.
We designed the space for how we wanted it.
This is San Diego County's new $93 million public health lab in Kearny Mesa. At 52,000 square feet, it's nearly 3 times larger than the old lab in Point Loma.
And this is what we use to actually identify bacteria.
The bigger space means they can do more testing of samples, and more testing means quicker results and faster treatment. Jeremy Corrigan is the San Diego County Public Health Lab Director.
In the past, we might have had to send samples out to CDPH or CDC and rely on a weeks to months turnaround time for those results.
Now, he says, the turnaround time is days. New at this lab is genomic sequencing.
It's an early warning system.
Genomic sequencing lets researchers identify a pathogen's unique genetic markers to determine where a disease outbreak came from or if there are multiple outbreaks.
To diagnose patients quicker, to prevent the spread of outbreaks and diseases.
The new facility is also a biosafety level 3 lab.
This is where we do measles, mumps, hepatitis.
Which means it can test for lethal pathogens such as anthrax and ricin. But most importantly, this facility allows the county some independence from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Because Corrigan says public health is local first.
We are in control of what our priorities are. And so this is why I'm able to stand up and bring up any kind of testing that our community needs, and I don't have to go through other permissions to do so.
In March, the Trump administration rescinded funding for the lab just as it was nearly complete. Corrigan says the federal funding was restored and the lab was completed in time for today's opening. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
Walmart is using artificial intelligence to reach more of its customers. Today, the retail chain announced a new feature called Everyday Health Signals. Walmart says those who opt in will get suggestions for healthy food options based on their shopping history. The potential audience is huge. Walmart says its customer base is now at 145 million weekly shoppers in store and online. The rise of AI is also an opportunity for scammers. The technology is now being used to clean up some of the obvious warning signs like bad grammar or weird phrasing in emails. Ivan Rodriguez tells what people should look for.
Nowadays, being able to catch AI-ridden scams feels like it requires an entirely new approach.
I would say yes, new playbook. I think training needs to be highly personalized.
Mike Britton with Abnormal AI says AI chatbots are helping scammers write messages that are not only free of typos, but also closely resemble those of trusted senders.
If I have a few samples of your writing or email, I can mimic your style using a ChatGPT or a Claude or any other AI chatbot. It's fairly trivial to understand what tools and technologies your organization uses, whether you're a Zoom shop or you use Microsoft, whatever you use for email, and I can start to craft third-party type of messages attacking.
For example, Britton says, a scammer might send what looks like a Zoom update email or an email impersonating your work's IT department, knowing there's a high likelihood people may open the link.
So as an attacker, I'm going to pretend to be one of those trusted brands.
With the threat of scammers trying to deceive people, Britton says there are ways people can stay aware and protect themselves on top of training through their work.
Time is your friend. Attackers and criminals are always working off a sense of urgency. And so if I get an email and it's my CEO and my CEO is asking for urgent help on getting gift cards, the more I step away and let my brain re-engage and kind of let the amygdala hijack kind of wear off, then I'm much more likely to use my training and what I know is the right things to do and not reply.
I'm Ivan Rodriguez reporting.
Environmental laws might soon be easier to navigate after a unanimous decision from the U.S. Supreme Court. The court has agreed to limit the scope of environmental reviews for major infrastructure projects. That includes things like highways, airports, and pipelines. The case before the court involved the expansion of a railroad in Utah that's used by oil companies. Critics say allowing it to move forward would ultimately weaken the nation's environmental protection laws. In recent weeks, they've become the darlings of YouTube. The world watched as 2 eaglets hatched in the mountain community of Big Bear. Now, the anticipation is growing for their next milestone. Nicole Comstock has the story.
Bravely branching out of the nest bowl, 145 feet above the forest floor in Big Bear, Sunny and Gizmo are flapping their wings, working up the confidence to take flight. And that big leap of faith will likely happen within the next 2 weeks.
Sunny has been very brave about doing all of those things, and Gizmo is a little bit behind, saying, oh, okay, maybe I'll try it today.
Sandy Steers has been watching this bald eagle nest camera like a hawk. She's the executive director of Friends of Big Bear Valley, a nonprofit that installed the camera in this Jeffrey pine tree. They maintain a live stream that shows viewers all over the world a day in the life of an eagle.
Well, we have 3 camera operators so that they're watching and maneuvering the camera 24 hours a day. And one is in Greece to do it while we sleep.
Wow. I didn't know this was an international operation.
It is. Yes.
The eaglet siblings are now 12 weeks old. That puts them right in the middle of their 10 to 14-week fledge or flight window.
When they start flapping and actually getting air under their feet for a little bit, that's a good sign that they'll feel more comfortable when they take off, that their wings can support them.
Once they fly, you can expect to see them followed around by Mom and Dad, Jackie and Shadow, and hanging around the nest for a bit. Right now, they think that's where the food comes from.
The chicks will watch Jackie and Shadow to see what to do, to see where they find the food, how they fish. And so this is their learning time, and they usually come back to the nest.
The fact that so many are watching this camera on friendsofbigbearvalley.org shows how the video is helping people connect with nature. Many have noticed they often cling to one another. Steer says they're the most loving eaglets they've seen.
It's so beautiful when they actually do fledge and they just take off and fly like they've been doing it their whole life. And it's amazing to see.
Nicole Comstock reporting. You can also find KPBS on YouTube. It's where we live stream KPBS Evening Edition weekdays at 5. Subscribe and get notified when new content is posted.
We are dealing with a pretty active pattern here, at least with a lot of action nearby between, we have Tropical Storm Alvin to the south, hundreds of miles to our south, still south of Mexico. But that will actually send some moisture our way. Areas to our east will see showers and thunderstorms late Sunday into Monday from that system, actually. And we're also going to see some changes here. We're dealing with a bit of a midsummer heat wave in some areas inland away from the coast through the first half of the weekend. Then it's going to begin to back off a bit Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, turning a bit cooler. But tonight, areas of low cloud cover near the coast, 62 for your low. But it's going to be a warm one, though, Friday and Saturday. The heat kind of reaches its big crescendo on Friday into Saturday. Some areas to our north will actually challenge record highs into places near Merced, Fresno, and even into the interior northwest. And on Friday, we're making a run to 100 degrees in Borrego Springs, 93 into Ramona, El Cajon 80. And we find the typical relief near the coast, 71s in Chula Vista and into San Diego. Now, to our south, hundreds of miles away, way south of Cabo San Lucas, we're tracking Tropical Storm Alvin. Alvin will likely remain a tropical storm until late Friday night, Saturday. In that time frame, we'll probably see the wind energy deteriorate here, and the storm will become a little bit more disfigured because of the colder water farther north. But it will remain a tropical depression, likely to the point of landfall late this weekend, way to our south in western Mexico. This will send some moisture our way. Most of the moisture will be diverted to our east, and this is going to bring some pretty good news here to the interior southwest, as a lot of the time in June, we get into wildfire danger here. This is going to curtail some of that into New Mexico and Colorado and eastern Arizona. Now, this particular model is pretty aggressive in sending some actual showers our way. We're hedging our bets against anything widespread, but there will be a little bit more cloud cover at least on Sunday and into Monday morning as well. And temperatures are going to back off. Into the inland areas, we'll see a little more cloud cover as moisture from Alvin is sent north. We go from 84 back to 74 by Tuesday, a big drop in temperature. In the mountains, we'll see some clouds. Could be a stray shower or storm with a little bit of a contribution from Alvin's moisture, sending some extra moisture north. Would drop 10 degrees from Saturday to Sunday. And in the deserts, temperatures back off from the heat on Friday, back to the low 90s on Sunday. For AccuWeather, I'm Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
55 years ago, a group of San Diego women took a stand for equality by sitting down at a prominent local restaurant. As Ken Kramer shows us, their actions on that June afternoon will forever be a part of the history about San Diego.
It happened here at the U.S. Grant Hotel, a stronghold of the downtown San Diego establishment in 1969. And at the U.S. Grant is, still to this day, its signature restaurant and lounge, the Grant Grill. So just imagine it's the 60s, and the Grant Grill was the place where over lunch and cigarettes, powerful deals were done and contracts signed. Pat Jacoby remembers.
It was dark and red leather cushioned seats.
Oh, and one more thing. No women allowed at lunch. No women. Men only until 3 o'clock. Pat Jacoby was working across the street where the Union Tribune used to be. Male reporters could say to their guests, let's go to lunch and do our interview at the Grant Grill. They serve a mock turtle soup. Nobody else has it. It's delicious.
They could take them to the Grant Grill and over lunch interview them. We couldn't.
No women allowed till after 3. Well, Pat and 5 of her female friends said this isn't fair, and they decided to invade. One of them was named Sydney.
And we made the reservations in her name because it was a male name.
And so Pat, Sydney, and 4 other women walk right in.
The maitre d' was not at all welcoming. He was shivering in his booth, so to speak.
They're shown to a booth way in the far way back.
With the oldest waiter who took the longest time to get there and to take our orders.
They came to be known as the Invaders. The argument was, hey, if women want mock turtle soup for lunch, there's no place else to go, is there?
we weren't striking a blow for women's rights at that point. We were mostly doing it because we felt discriminated against. One, because the mock turtle soup you couldn't get anywhere else in the community except at the Grant Grill. Discrimination.
She says looking back, they knew they were going to be successful.
All the men in the room were so discerning and so snobbish about it, about having this activity going on.
The invaders won their point and changed lunchtime at the Grant Grill forever.
I guess we were radical and we didn't think of it as that.
Over the 50 years since their invasion, they've now and then gotten together, been honored with a San Diego proclamation, including a menu from that June day in 1969, and there's the mock turtle soup. How times have changed since back then.
Well, we certainly are accepting of women in many roles that weren't available in our age 50 years ago.
And something else. If you look today, on the wall outside the Grant Grill are plaques in tribute to the invaders, along with that old sign, the original one that said no women until 3 o'clock. These days, Pat Jacoby says she doesn't hear much about it anymore.
But way back when, there were the women invaders.
And they changed some history about San Diego.
Ken Kramer has a half hour of stories every week about San Diego. You can see them Thursday nights at 8, right here on KPBS. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm John Carroll. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.